Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Radiah Rhodes. Radiah Rhodes is an alchemist, activist, and innovator for all things well-being. After 2 decades of experience leading in small businesses and Fortune 100 companies across beauty, health and wellness, and information technology, Radiah is known for her strategic acumen, impeccable design, and intuitive ability to connect, lead, and accelerate multi-million-dollar results through people and products. Most recently, Radiah authored the book, Being is the New Doing, a divine guide to owning your energy, time, and peace of mind. As an entrepreneur, corporate leader, wife, and mother of 2 amazing and active children, Radiah knows what it takes to be extraordinary in life and experience great success of the mind, body, and spirit. Her life's work is training high-achieving, results-oriented clients on a breakthrough method of succeeding without sacrificing themselves in the process. It's the ultimate well-being. Yes, it is. Welcome to the podcast, Radiah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Kimberly.
Yes, it sounds like you have just a wealth of a background, so I'm so excited to get into this interview and learn about you. And why don't we just start out by you telling us a little bit about you, where you grew up, how you started out? You're involved in so many things. How did that all happen?
Yeah, so I say by the grace of God, like really, I have a journey of grace. I grew up in New Jersey, so I'm a Jersey girl through and through, and it really is the Garden State. So it's not what people think of the Turnpike and all of that. And I grew up near the Jersey Shore, right on the beach,
Mhm.
and it's also not the Jersey Shore from the show. Very beautiful, just open and bright place, I think, to grow up. I grew up under circumstances, and I tell a little bit about my story in the book, but I consider myself a child of duality. Very much really amazing experiences as a child and a lot of love and community, but also behind that, a lot of shadow, just a lot of challenges with family substance abuse and illness and things like that. And so my journey was really just guides making themselves present, throughout at divine timing to just take me to the next step. So I started in kindergarten, and then I was moved to a school that was magnet, a gifted and talented school. And so I got exposed to different things there. And my father, dated and married for a long time. My stepmother and her family was a military family, and so had, traveled the world and had certain experiences in a beautiful home. And so all of these things kind of gave me this really light and shadow side of experience growing up. I'm a Pisces, like there's all this duality. And I went to high school, and there was a program. My biology teacher said, "You are really smart. You should be in this program." So I went to a summer engineering program, and I loved liquid nitrogen, and I wanted to become a metallurgist. So it was fun. I was like, "This is amazing." And then a good friend of mine went to school at North Carolina State a year before I did. I went to visit her, and I said, "Oh, this is where I want to go." And they had a materials engineering program, so it was perfect. So I went to North Carolina for years to go to college. I graduated as an engineer there, where I met my husband as well. And things were pretty, just the trajectory was, limitless. I left school and moved to Maryland to work for Procter and Gamble. So here I am, this like new engineer, working for Procter and Gamble, moving to Maryland, closer to home in New Jersey. My boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, moved to DC. And so really just starting an amazing life as an adult in Baltimore. And it it was amazing. And then I hit a brick wall. I think I knew the first year in my career that it wasn't working for me, but I didn't leave. I stayed. And so I had so much fun, as a young adult, but at the same time, it seemed really hard. My job wasn't working out. And then our relationship started to not really work out. And so there was just this, I think, period of time that was really tough and challenging. And interestingly enough, my boyfriend or husband now, we got engaged, which was like, oh, we did it. Okay, it's working out.
Mhm.
And then I was like, it's not working out. And we broke off our engagement. And then through kind of a really interesting story, which we'll have to do another podcast maybe, but um, he was in a really bad car accident and reached out to me, and we started to talk again. And eventually we got back together. And in a 2-year period, we had 2 children. We sold 2 houses, built a house, a business launched, and 10x'd in size. And I had changed positions within Procter & Gamble 3 times in 24 months. And it sent me reeling identity-wise. And the process I used to move myself through that period was an Excel spreadsheet, literally. As an engineer, it was like my go-to.
Right.
And so I literally worked myself through like my challenges and just a process of self-identity, like defining my identity through an Excel spreadsheet. And I looked at it and said, I think this is something that could help other people. Like it really has worked for me. And I called in my great friend and sister, Dr. Ronnie Ellington, who's my business partner. And we created a whole process and business around that Excel spreadsheet, basically. And so here we are.
That's amazing. That's so amazing. So for the listeners who don't know the qualities of liquid nitrogen, why don't you explain those qualities and why liquid nitrogen? Because I know what it is. Why it's such a fun substance to play with.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, when you think about it's super, super cold, it steams, it's cool to watch, it moves fluidly. It's like a natural phenomenon, right? You're looking at it. And it just amazed me. I couldn't believe it. And so I was like, this is what I want to do. Play around with liquid nitrogen.
Yeah, and it can be very damaging if it
Yes,
gets on your
it can
skin or
burn,
anything
and
like
absolutely,
that.
absolutely.
Exactly. So, and then I'm really curious about this spreadsheet. So when I think of a spreadsheet, I think, well, you can see where there's similarities and differences if you were to put something on a spreadsheet, but how did you use that spreadsheet?
Yeah, so my father, one day, I had a long commute to work, about an hour commute, and I was talking to my father on the way to work, and I was complaining, like, this is crazy, whatever, work, husband, kids, right? It was just all crazy. And he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Just answer the question." And I did not know the answer. And I always say, I knew what I wanted. I knew how to get it. I knew why I wanted it. And I did not know who I was. I had never thought comprehensively about who am I as a human being, as a woman, in these roles that I so easily claimed. And so I used this spreadsheet to define who I am, to answer that question. What came to me before I got into the spreadsheet, I meditated, I sat with it because he wouldn't give me any clues as to how to answer it. And what came to me is, I am life-changing love. And as an engineer, that's ambiguous and ethereal and doesn't feel very practical. But I knew it was true. I knew it resonated so deeply and so divinely. I knew it was true. And so I went about defining it. So I used this spreadsheet to define life-changing love, what that meant, who I was. And it was a series of declarations and standards and preferences and deal breakers. So it was boundary setting. It was envisioning. It was just a full view and look at who I was, who I wanted to be, how I saw myself, and what I wanted for my life.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people walking around like that. We think we know ourselves, but sometimes we actually even have to like step out and at like a third person and observe ourselves from outside, because we're so into our feelings, our thoughts, our own thoughts, which I've heard that we think the same things over and over. We almost have to step out or have a process like that to help us to negotiate or to figure that out.
Absolutely. And I think we also put a lot of weight on who we are as human beings. So one, you're right, it's subconscious, it's conditioned, it's operating in the background in whatever we are doing, but we are not sovereign in that. We don't have agency in it. And like you said, really stepping out as the observer and seeing it. And it's really a game we get to play as human beings. We get to choose who we are in any moment, how we want to show up, who we're going to be about something in any moment. That's just the nature of human beingness. So it's a lot lighter, but we have so much gravity in who we are because we, to your point, we identify with our thoughts and our feelings that we've racked up through our conditioning and our life's experiences. So they have a lot of gravity. It's I'm trying to remember what the Four Agreements, calls it in terms of like the dream, we're in it, and it is us. And we fight for it.
Yes, but I love that we can show up. I mean, we can wake up. I love sleeping because when I wake up, it's a new day and I can choose however I want to express myself, who I want to be that day. And I'm an optometrist, so I identified very strongly with being a doctor. And I'm like, so many times I'd ask myself, well, would a doctor do this? Or, especially when I was younger, what would my patients think if I do this? Because there's that, like you said, the gravity of my way of creating income is based on whether people like me as a doctor or they like what I'm doing. So if you go out and do something crazy, because I know some doctors who have, they lose their patients. So I can see where people, whatever it is their identity is, they kind of get trapped and almost limited by their own thinking. At least I know as a younger person, I really did. Now I'm, I'm older.
You're like, forget all of it.
I'm just going to be myself. But as a younger person, yeah, it was very more rigid.
Yeah, I mean, it's about being steeped in survival, and so the stories you're telling about who you are and what you need to do are based on the, need to survive. There's not enough room for this space of, thriving or flourishing or actualizing where you can choose, where there's not a have to be or do anything in any particular way because you're trying to avoid pain or, conflict, but you are able, responsible, capable, right? You are able to be in this life in a powerful way. And so you get to choose whatever way that looks like. That takes experience and awakening and responsibility and ownership, but that is a beautiful place to come from, in your life.
Yeah. So if there are people listening who maybe they are where I was, where they're brand new, they're starting their business. I was really driven, business wise. And sometimes then kids, how do they take that time, or how do they find that space to actually create that space where they can look and see who they are?
Yeah. So the answer is always pretty straightforward. You schedule the time. That is what the answers to things are usually pretty specific and very obvious. It's not so much, how or what to do. It's who are you going to be about scheduling that time? Are you going to be a victim of time and therefore can never get it scheduled? Are you going to be striving for time and therefore it's always kind of just out of your reach? Are you going to be sovereign with your time, where you get to say what your time is devoted to and your energy, right? And any of your resources. And then you commit and honor that commitment to what you declare. So it's never what we know, schedule the time. And then when that time arises, honor what you said. But it's all the challenges we have to actually doing that. And those challenges are based in who we're being. Are we being a victim? Are we striving? Are we sacrificing? And these words I'm using are what we call our intention scale. So this is how I define intention. It's always about your intention. And it's not, we've defined intention very narrowly, kind of as thoughts or objectives of what we want. I set my intentions. And sometimes we talk about it as, it's a purposeful way to focus. And what I say is you don't have an intention, you are an intention. So just like communication, a very small percentage of what actually goes out are your verbal words. Most of it is intangible, body language, tone, all these other things. It's the same thing with intention. Your action is actually a small part of what's creating. It really is where you're coming from. It's the background of beliefs and thoughts. It is the emotions that you interpret, the physiology of your body, what's going on internally, and then it's those actions. And so that's what I call the anatomy of being, and that's measured by your intention level. And so the question is, are you suffering, which is the lowest intention level? Not because it's bad, but there's a very limited view of what you can create when you're in a place of suffering. But suffering can also serve as purification, right? So it's not a good or bad judgment. It's just a realization of what's available to you at that level. So when you talk about business, running a business, having a full life with children and activities, if you're in a place of suffering as an identity of who you are, like the bulk of your life lives inside of this intense pain and victimization and struggle, blame, then you're only going to see a limited view of ways to take that time or to do certain things. So you have to elevate your intention, right? So that new opportunities, new ideas arise, and then you have the space to actually execute and do the things that you envision.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense because I was talking to someone last night. She had gone to Russia and she said that there's a really big difference. There's very wealthy people and there's just people who they just don't have anything. And I was thinking, there's people like that all over the world who
Mm-hmm.
some stay in that condition their whole life and sometimes with no education, with nothing, rise above and become our millionaire, billionaire people.
Mm-hmm.
What makes the difference between someone that rises and someone that doesn't?
Yeah. So, and that's an interesting question because there are a few things. One is, as human beings, we're all human beings, and we all have innate choice to consciously choose a way of being that's going to be fruitful, right? That's going to allow for success. So it's available to all of us, but it's not always accessible. And so it's not but yet that doesn't make it impossible. But there are, so it's a double-edged sword in terms of the question, because we have the innate ability as human beings, we're born with that. And then there's the reality that we have to contend with, the reality that we are in the experience of our life that we have to move through. And so while we always have the possibility, because of who we are as human beings, the circumstances matter and they make a difference. And so even though people can kind of squeak through the circumstances because they're still human and they can still do that, the circumstances have to be addressed. So that's another reason why we actually built the intention scale, because I'm actually certified in an amazing energy coaching program for years now, almost 10 years. And I went off and designed a new program and process because that program, although it was true, it did not address, specifically being a Black woman, it did not address the levels and the layers of conditioning and life experience that I have to contend with. And so I had to create a system and a structure that acknowledged that and actually embraced that as an asset and not as a deficit, as part of my humanity, and allowed me to then see possibilities to rise up through it. So, we each have the natural human ability to do so, but circumstances matter and make a difference. And they have to be addressed in whatever the way is that's going to help turn that light on for people.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me because for several years I worked in the inner city of Atlanta as a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes there would be four women come in, great grandmother, grandmother, mother,
Mm-hmm.
and they all had children at I don't know how old, 14.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just a cycle. It's like, oh, well, how do people get out of that cycle? Because there are a lot of people in that. Some are just okay to accept it and just continue it. But there's a lot of people that want to arise above and
Mm-hmm.
being that more and more. And one of the things I really love about the fact that we have the internet is that it helps people be able to actually get some access where they didn't have it before to at least some good advice, or even people. There's a lot of good people out there who are willing, if you ask them, they are so happy to help.
Yeah, the challenge with that is, you know, we people, those of us that have certain level of means and, are fortunate enough to have access and exposure to certain things and have made, some success, we struggle with what we deal with. So imagine if you are trying to not only deal with the stuff in life, the normal stuff, but you're trying to deal with basic needs. You're trying to deal with safety on a regular basis, and you don't have access to basic things like good food, like so healthy water. Like this is real stuff. And so when you think about how hard it is for those of us who have amazing places to live, no questions about water and whatever we need for basic needs, and how we get upset and struggle with the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just in our own world, in our own houses, but yet put you in a circumstance where your basic needs are questionable, your safety is threatened on a regular basis, and you now want me to try to get out of a cycle that my generationally have been systemically, put oppressed it within.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people that do it, but we have to acknowledge how exceptional and extraordinary that is, as opposed to then use that as a way to say, well, why don't you do it? Why doesn't everybody do it?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to acknowledge the reality that people are living in, even when it's not our reality. And we have to be willing to believe the reality that people are living in, even when it's not our reality. And it makes a difference. So it's possible, yes, but it has to be addressed. It has to be acknowledged. It has to be dealt with. And what it is, the real circumstances and the reality in which people are living and dealing on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
It's important.
Yeah, yes, it really, really is. So talk more about your evoke process.
Yeah. So it's engineered, my
Of
business
course.
partners and I, my business partners and I are all engineers, mathematicians. And so it's really a combination of design thinking, which is kind of an innovation process, along with engineering processes and spiritual living, spiritual and universal principles and laws. And so it's, one of the things you talked about is access. This conversation of, we usually talk about manifestation, but consciousness, enlightenment and awakening has been something that has been spoken about very ethereally
Mm-hmm.
and mystically. And while there absolutely is a mysticism and a divinity to it, and I love that, it also is that's exclusive. That language about it makes it very exclusive and doesn't allow people to have access to it. And so we had to break it down, those concepts, into something very practical so more people could have access to it and
Mm-hmm.
could engage it and actually see results from it. So it's an engineered process. We take you through some series or sequencing of 9 steps, 9 very simple, not even earth-shattering, but very profound exercises,
Mm-hmm.
um, in a way that we evaluate different topics. It could be leadership, it could be relationships, health, and or wealth, whatever the topic. We construct a paradigm
Mm-hmm.
around that topic, and then we walk our clients through some sequence and version of the 9 steps for
Mm-hmm.
their transformation. And then we apply what's called intention coaching,
Mm-hmm.
which is about helping to really keep them conscious and responsible and sovereign of their personal intention level towards a specific goal. And that's how they create the results they want. They create tangible results, experience of life that they've envisioned, and the impact they want to have.
Well, that is beautiful because I have found that to be the case too. I mean, you can listen forever and ever on, law of attraction and things like that, but it's like,
Hmm.
it's just how do you grab it? How do
Yes.
you hold it? How do you
Yeah,
do it? Because we
that's
have
it.
these thoughts going through our head all the time. Seems to be that they just appear. I mean, you can do whatever you want with them, but they appear there. And to be saying switch, switch, switch all day is
Mhm.
really exhausting. And does it actually get you somewhere?
Yeah, I love our process too because it's a learning. So it's actually quarterly. So when I created that spreadsheet,
Mhm.
I left it for like 3 months and I just happened to come back to it. And I was like, wow, like some of these things that I had as fears had gone away.
Mhm.
Some of the goals I had accomplished, I saw the transformation for myself. And then I would just update it. And then 3 months later, I'd come back to it and the same thing had happened. And that's when I really started to say, wow, this is working for about a year. And
Mhm.
my life was unrecognizable, right? My previous life and what had really occurred. And so when we turn that into our process, we do it quarterly.
Mhm.
Every quarter I play, we call it a game. I play a game. I
Mhm.
put my game plan together. I define my who, these different steps in the process. And then I go about the way I live. And on a daily basis, I'm checking my intention around, am I who I say I am
Mhm.
about what I say I want? Am I being who I say I am about what I want? And if that's a match, it's going to create the results I want. And it always does.
Wow,
So
you're just like checking it once a day. Like we want to definitely be checking our finances once a day. We want to see where everything's at, where the money's going. So this is just kind of similar where you're kind of checking, saying, okay, where am I at today?
somewhat, yeah. So we have a day planner, and our evoke intention planner is just like a normal planning process in terms of, your schedule and things like that. But we have you to create it from a place of being, not a place of doing, which means you're prioritizing who you are and what your goals are, what is important to you. And then each day, the daily layout, you have what do you want to create that day? You
Mhm.
have kind of a wake up and a wind down routine and your schedule. And then there are two intention checks. So each day, usually after I have breakfast and do my workout, before I start my work,
Mhm.
I do an intention check. And then at the end of my workday, I do another one.
Mhm.
And then at the end of the week, I look at like, did my week align with my target intention? And was it fulfilling and meaningful to me? So it's a different conversation
Mhm.
around time and priority and schedule.
Yes. And do you have any type of accountability set up with that?
For the planner, the day planner, it's a daily and weekly accountability for yourself. Our programs use that day planner, of course, and so that we run a whole accountability structure.
Mhm.
And so the process is one part of it. You read the book, you get the day planner. We have a program called the Inner Game Plan. It's a self-guided 30-day kind of, like I like to call it, meditation, like bite-sized,
Mhm.
walking you through the process. And then there are weekly calls where we intention coach you through it.
Mhm.
And then we have other programs where there's small group coaching or private, and we run that accountability structure of calls to coach you through it.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was asking because
Hmm.
so you answered it when you said you have the group some group calls because I think it's been really helpful in the past for me to actually have some type of accountability partner. And you can always have your coach. Your coach is going to keep you accountable, but
Hmm.
there's something about having someone who's going through the same thing.
Yeah, it is. It's inspiring. It's enlightening. What you can learn. We love groups. Some people, we work with very high end clients, and so confidentiality is critical, and
Mhm.
so that just has to be a private setting.
Mhm.
But the group programs are a lot of fun, and just seeing people connect and see themselves reflected in other people's stories,
Mhm.
and the kind of growth that can happen from that is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. So, talk about just well-being in general.
Yeah, so for us, I always say emphasis is on the being,
Hmm.
because most of the time I hear people interpret well-being as wellness, health and wellness,
Hmm.
and those are absolute components of it. Um, but it's really just a mind, body, spirit sense of health, safety, prosperity, expression, creativity,
Mhm.
innovation. So it's the full actualization of your human existence. And the more you're able to do that, the more well, you are. And it's about being, not doing. So a lot of what is available to us about around our well-being or wellness are tactics and strategies and life hacks and all these things to do, and they're fantastic, um, but they don't always work, or they don't work for long, because we don't know who we are,
Mhm.
and we're trying to put a tactic on top of a totally mismatch for that tactic and wondering why. Oh, it worked for Warren Buffett, why does it work for me? And it's, you're not Warren Buffett and he's not you. And so knowing who you are, you'll know what tactic will work for you at
Mhm.
a particular time, and it will change.
Mhm.
So well-being is about just in a state of existence that is healthy and safe and prosperous and creative and expressive and innovative, and connected. And how you experience well-being is through knowing and embracing and sovereignty of self.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I understand what you're saying because I know there's been times when I have all my ducks in a row. Okay, I work out, I eat these foods, I
Right.
do this, I do that, and at the end of the month, I think I'm exhausted. Well, I might
Right.
be getting my goals, but I'm exhausted because there is a mismatch when you don't connect your spirit with what you're doing.
That's right. That's it.
Yeah.
So we say our process is spirit-led, science-based, and reality-driven.
Oh.
You know, it's got to have all those facets.
Mhm.
And even as we talk about goals, we define our goals as tangible results, as experiences, and impact, the three of those. And that's why a lot of times, like you said, we'll achieve a goal, but it won't be fulfilling or meaningful because we just defined it one dimensionally. We didn't take into account our full being
Mhm.
and what our full being is really wanting in the situation, desiring and calling for. And we didn't define that. So we got one part of it, and oftentimes not even the most important part to us, because we're so focused on the material, tangible possession
Mhm.
often.
Yes. Now you've recently authored a book. Why don't you tell us the name of the book and tell us about it?
Yeah. So it's Being is the New Doing, and it is a divine guide to owning your energy, time, and peace of mind. And my goal, my core value is freedom.
Mhm.
I want to feel, experience freedom. I want to share that with people. I want to claim and own my freedom,
Mhm.
because I love to create. And that's the place where my creativity is, the best experience. Whether that's a business I'm creating or a relationship I'm creating, whatever that is. So I wrote this book because the process that my partners and I had developed, this intention scale, it had made such an impact on my life, and I knew it could help others, and we needed to get it out there.
Mhm.
And so I wrote the book because we wanted it to help free people up. We wanted to give you a practical tool that is not a tactic, but
Mhm.
a tool for you to use that can match wherever you are
Mhm.
and help you to see where you are and who you are, so that you have some power and agency to shift that and be free of your identity, not be a prisoner to your identity. So this book goes through the different levels on our intention scale, each level, and I just tell a personal story um, from my own experience of living at that level and what it looks like, and what that level is about, and how you can shift yourself from that level. And it's short; it's a very easy read,
Mhm.
but there's just something about this intention scale that's a truth teller
Mhm.
for everyone, and so it makes a huge impact.
Wow. Yeah. And I think right now is a great time for that because one of my core values, one of the highest ones also is freedom.
Hmm.
And I'm, as I'm talking to people like you, I'm trying to find resources for people because right now I feel like a lot of our freedoms, uh, people from outside are trying to take them away. At least it
Mm.
feels that way. So I want to help people with any tools that they could have. And that was a great tool to start out and just see where you're at, who you are, how you want to, um, you know, continue forward with your life, even with other stuff going on around. If you have your base, if you're in your, base, you're going to make the right decisions no matter what's going on around you.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it goes a little bit back to the conversation we were having earlier around understanding the reality that's at play.
Mhm.
That is the context. You have to understand context to be able to move something powerfully. One of the things about our program is it's not a slow change or a growth. It is a transformation, and transformation occurs and can occur, instantaneously. But you have to have a really powerful shift. And so our process is about accelerating and elevating the shift. But what's most important is context.
Mhm.
Without context, you can't, it's very difficult. Let me say, not you can't, but it's very difficult to make a shift. So, what's important around, as you talk about our freedom, is what is the context each of us is living within? And in understanding that innately, what would make the difference in shifting it so that we know, well, what is the goal here? What is the outcome you want? So, if you feel as though your freedoms are being, or you feel as though people are trying to take freedoms away, there's a context in which that evaluation
Mhm.
lives,
Yes.
right? There's some set of conditioning that you've grown up with. There's some way you see reality that has you interpret what's happening as um, a grab of your freedom.
Mhm.
And if you really want to shift your experience, then you have to see what's that context you're living within that's
Mhm.
causing that view. And then you can shift it.
Yeah.
Because the answer's not out there,
Mhm.
right? We know the answer is not out there. The answer is within. But again, context matters. We have to understand and identify and address context. And everyone can do that, but everyone doesn't have access and are not in a reality that allows for them to see that and do that. So we have to keep, those of us who can see it right now have to keep opening that door, keep opening the door, keep shining the light
Mhm.
so you can see, like, this is what I really want. This is what a vision is. This is what I can create. Now here's the context that's going to allow for me to actually do that.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a personal question.
Mhm.
What for you gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life?
There's so many things. So if I say the most, creation.
Mhm.
Creating. I love to create ideas. I'm playing a game this quarter. So this quarter, my game is called Samurai Living. And
Uh-huh.
it really is about kind of slicing away the extraneous, because my goal is to turn my ideas into reality with velocity.
Mhm.
And so I love ideas. I love the process of creating. Even when I look at my career, I started out in manufacturing, right? Literally creating physical things. And then I went through every part of the process: supply chain, supplier management, package design, all kind of logistics, and then innovation. The last part of my career was in taking something from a consumer idea to a product on the shelf in retail.
Mhm.
And so I love it. Creating relationships with my family, experiences with the people I love, creating concepts that move and change people's way of thinking and their experience of life. That's what I'm here for.
Beautiful. Well, if people wanted to get a hold of you, do you have a website? Do you have a place they could come and say, "Oh, I'd like," where can they get your book? Where can they get your coaching and your program?
Yeah, sure. So our website is evokelife.com, EVOK life.com. And we're on social media as Evoke Life on Instagram or on LinkedIn. Also Radiah Rhodes. You can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. Our programs are listed on our website, so you can check them out. The book is on Amazon. It's also on our website with the planner, and our programs are listed. You can enroll directly from the site as well. So we're out here.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for being on the podcast today, for all your wisdom and the distinctions you made. That was really critical, I think, because so many people, like you said, they talk kind of ethereal, and you made a lot of distinctions that I think will be really, really helpful for people. So thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you inviting me and for just giving me an opportunity to share. Thank you.
So before we get off, one last question. What do you
Hmm.
think makes the most incredible, amazing life?
Love. Love. I mean, I think that's just the basis of it, just the experience of expression, connection, growth, transformation, realization. Love is love.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.